stand to my feet now because Queen, do I need to stand up now? And there you go.
Another episode of wait a minute, where are we at? Something over there looks a bit different. I don't know what was going on or where we at. What's this show here?
We had a makeover, chatting with the Clays.
Oh my goodness. Wow. I feel underdressed here. What a fantastic look. Dad, what was that in your hand there? What do you got going on?
A
Oh,
little top of the afternoon to you.
incredible. Okay, I'm a little jealous here. I'm empty-handed, but we'll do what we can. So no, it's absolutely exciting to join you all today, and I know that this is for
I'll
us.
rub it in.
Oh yeah, you certainly have, by the way, but that's okay. We'll talk. I'm invoicing somebody for something. Uh,
And yeah, yours is in the mail.
but we are coming through. This is certainly the day the Lord has made, and we'll rejoice and be glad therein. And we also are sober and aware and in tune with one of probably the defining moments of this generation, but the last century in what we've seen in the Capitol building in Washington
Mm-hmm.
D.C. This was just a unprecedented experience. The sort of protest that rolled off into the riot, I think, has had a lot of national attention, and so it should. And we now are coming to learn the extent of that violence, and there was loss of life, and we certainly have sobriety, and we're praying for the families of those that have been affected, and we know that our nation and our world is in transition. But to have this conversation today, I think isn't necessarily walking a political minefield. I think there is a pertinent topic that I strongly felt would be interesting for this conversation, which is transition training. We know that this week has been particularly difficult because we in the United States are approaching a transition of power. On January 20th, we will have a new president. And despite the details of how we've arrived there as it relates to US politics and the Electoral College, we do know that this is going to be a transition in power, period. This is happening. And we are all watching to see this unfold. But, I think there are some things beyond the scope of political beliefs and some of the details of how we've arrived here that believers can certainly digest. And I want to lead us through that conversation, regardless of political beliefs. I think, there are lessons to learn in transition. It's by no coincidence that we are at the top of a new year. Some have made their resolutions. We are turning a corner prayerfully in a global pandemic, of course. And there's a lot of transitions happening economically. There have been transitions. The way that school has been different and is in transition. The way that church has been done has been in transition. There's a lot of transitions, but allow me to sort of frame this conversation as we talk about transition training, to think about a person who saw some very dramatic transitions in their lifetime, which was Daniel. We know Daniel is a person whom we've learned a lot from, who has written and led us through as believers a blueprint of navigating tumultuous transition. Although there were a number of leaders who spanned the time of Daniel, who are captured in the book of Daniel, we know that there were four key figures. We have Nebuchadnezzar the second, we have Belshazzar, we have Darius, and I believe that's Darius the first, and then also Cyrus the second, who we see accounted for all in the book of Daniel. And Daniel shows us in many different ways how we navigate as believers, excuse me, in times of transition. But also, Daniel was directly in the political fire by the position that he held, and also by the influence he maintained. So I think in so many different ways, we learn a lot from the book of Daniel. And I think especially now, this is a time where if you're not familiar with the book of Daniel, this would be a good time to actually go back to the book of Daniel to see some of his experience, to learn how he navigated as a believer, and then also to use that as a point of reflection and prayer as we seek God's guidance and his wisdom in moving forward in the transitions that we are experiencing right now. So, with that sort of framing, again, I want to move into the big topic of transition training. God has absolutely not reacted to what's going on in the world and in this country. He sits on top of all of it in his awareness, all of it under his influence, all of it he presides over as the sovereign of the universe and time. And there's so many lessons that we can take as relates to other kinds of transitions. So let me just open up with an initial question related to Daniel. Just off top of mind, hearing this for the first time as we do in these conversations, what is one key takeaway in your reflection of all of the book of Daniel? What is a key takeaway that stands out to you as it relates to Daniel's attitude in a time of transition?
Ask me the last part again.
What's a key takeaway of Daniel's attitude in a time of transition? I just want to start on the surface level. I don't want to go deep. I'm going to lead you all somewhere. But what's just the key takeaway, your first reaction about Daniel's attitude in a time of transition?
Just if I could just get to the top of it, I can recall before he goes into that 21 days of consecration and prayer, if we're on the same page, when God was revealing his actions towards his people, and Daniel takes it to heart, he takes it personally, and he seeks the Lord for clearer understanding. And I think he's wanting to feel the pulse of God, if I would say it like that. I don't want to keep going because I'm really in chapter 10, but my mind will carry me into chapter 7. And so that's his positioning that he was in. So he's taken his spiritual position that was accompanying his natural position in fasting and prayer.
Excellent. Excellent. Yes. Seeking God for understanding. That's awesome. I think that's especially relevant and salient right now because we can be seeking a lot of different places for understanding of what's going on, especially the 24-hour news media cycle, social media, our overexposure to the details and angles and perspectives. But, it might sound simplistic, but I think you're 100% right, Dad. It's fundamental nonetheless, seeking God for understanding of what's going on and what that means for us. Awesome. Mom, just your initial topical reaction. What is a takeaway that you have as it relates to Daniel's attitude at any point during the transitions that we've learned about that are written in the book of Daniel?
Yeah, and well, actually, my first one was seeking God, and I think Daniel was thinking, I need to know how to get through this.
Yeah.
How am I going to get through these things? Yeah, because it's almost like what's next, but again, without the direction of God, how am I going to get through it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's really interesting because, of course, we all have different tools that we can use, different attitudes and temperament and different experiences that we've come from and different resources. And we are going to have to draw upon those because we're not all going through this different. I mean, and almost my reaction to that, we all handle conflict different. We all handle stress different. We
Right.
all handle things different. Some people are talkers. Some people are more internal. Some people have to take
Yes.
time to process, and they really, whether they're aware of it or not, need to shut out the world and really spend some time hearing their own thoughts. Because, sitting in the midst of just constant conversation and chatter, you can find yourself getting lost if you don't have time to be reflective and prayerful and meditate to really almost try to register with what you're feeling and what you're experiencing. So I think that again is another really good point. Let me continue to drill down the rabbit hole here, because this isn't again just about politics. When we think about transitions, again, there's all sorts of transitions, and I truly believe, and this is the theme of the conversation today, and I'll repeat it. Repeat this. There is transition training, or training in transition, however you want to say it. Transition for all of our lives is going to be constant. We say change is constant, but let me just narrow that a bit and say that transition is constant. You go from being a baby to a child to a teenager, teenager to a new adolescent, adolescent to full blown adolescent to midlife, midlife to senior. And those transitions are going to be constant. So, what is God teaching us and showing us about us? uh, how have we matured and grown in the depth of our relationship with God each step? And how do we prevent ourselves from going through this the same way and expecting different results, cycling through change and transition and tragedy without, again, reverting back to bad habits and old habits? So I want to challenge, the audience to think as I load up this next question. Think about all the transitions that we're incurring. You have a job and you might be part-time and then you transition to full-time. That's different. How do you balance that? How do you balance the stress? How do you balance the additional responsibility? How do you learn how to do what you were asked to do before and continue to stay efficient and productive in that while piling on new information and new knowledge? And then at some point you grow to supervisor, and it's not just what your individual duties are and what your productivity is you have to now take on training and onboarding other people. You're disseminating knowledge. You're dealing with other personalities. You're dealing with conflict. You're dealing with perspectives of people who are starting in different places and have different strengths and weaknesses. That's a transition. Uh, Maybe you go from renting or living with your parents or your family to living on your own, and maybe that's renting. Maybe you've gone to college, and that's a transition. You go from being a renter to actually buying and owning a home, and now you have utilities and bills, and there's new skills that you need to maintain your home. There's things that you have to be aware of that when you were renting you didn't have to be aware of: creaks in the floor, and when you hear a pipe rattle, you hear those weird sounds. My experience, being a first time homeowner years ago, was listening to all the sounds in the house. And I was telling dad about this. You lose the sleep because you're like, what's that? Wait, what's that? What's that? How much is that
Right.
going to cost? It's all along the scope of transition. And then you may relocate to another city, and you have to learn your directions. You have to learn where to shop. You have to learn traffic patterns. You may get married, right? And now you have to learn how not to just internally, quietly make decisions on your own, but you have to learn to communicate. You have to learn to experience life uh, uh, um, with a co pilot, someone who's experiencing that with you, and the skill of communication, the skill of navigating and making decisions with a person who thinks different than you and has a
Right.
different background than you. That's a challenge. Then you transition to parenting, and you parent babies, and then those babies get older. You parent kids, and then you parent teens, and then you got to figure out how to parent an adult, as opposed to parenting that child the same way like they're a baby. You got to figure out your role as a parent and the needs of parent and adult, and then you become a grandparent. I'm saying all of that just simply to say that isn't just about politics. Transition is constant in our life, and we have to understand that God is training us with each and every transition. So now that I've loaded that all the way up, Dad,
All the way up.
give me an example of what you've learned and how you've grown, just one, in one of the transitions that I named before. So pick any kind of transition you've experienced as a human being in life and just give me an example of what you learned and how you grew during that period of transition?
Oh, you want me to take
No,
it
no, no, I
first?
said dad. No, dad.
Oh, you want me first?
Yeah. You always say I'm slighting you, so you know I'm serving you
Wow.
the platter
Slide
first.
of the hand, slide of the hand. Um, um, you spread it out so broad, and you did. You loaded it up. I was thinking on Daniel's experience when he went down into prayer.
Wait. Are you doing Daniel or are you doing you?
I'm doing me.
Okay. I just want to make sure. Okay.
Yeah, I'm doing me, but I'm just reflecting on something that I studied, and then it came to pass.
Okay. I'm with you.
All right, I was just kind of making that, and how that we are not aware of what's going on really around us in the spiritual realm, and because we're not aware of that, and we ask God for so many things, and in asking God, believe in God, and then when it comes to pass, is like, wow, I'm amazed or I'm shocked.
Mm-hmm.
And what I experienced was, and I still am experiencing, we believe God for so many things, but then when it happens, it's like it shocks us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to put I had to put it together, and then I had to reevaluate how I thought. And what came to me was this is just what God does. And at one point, it's like God would do things, and other people knew that God was doing things, and they were just like, "Oh yeah, God," and were just what I want to say, shouting and glorifying God, which we should do that. But to me, I want to say that's just what God does.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make any sense?
Mm-hmm.
I become relaxed in the things that God does.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what He does.
I
He
understand.
works miracles. That's just what He does. In other words, it's a normal for God to heal, deliver, and set free. It's a normal thing for God to do what He said He's going to do.
Yes.
It becomes normal.
Now give me an example.
Huh?
Give me an example. Help me relate for you.
Providing. I was going through a situation, and we always talk about finances, so I'll use finances. I was going through something, and I used to hear them talking about that God will bless, and you can go to the mailbox, and there'll be a blessing waiting in the mailbox.
Mm-hmm.
Or and I went to the mailbox, and I wasn't expecting anything, nothing. And I went to the mailbox, and it was a blessing right there. That blessing met the needs, and it just put me into an all experience. But later on, and again, like I said before, that's just what God does. And the thing that got me so is like, man, I've heard them say that God will have a blessing. You go to your mailbox, and the blessing be right there. I experienced that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mom, do the same thing. Give me an example of a particular transition that you've gone through in life and something you've learned as a result of that transition.
Again, probably just thinking again on parenting. That was the big thing that jumped out as you were talking, and making transition from mother to grandmother, and the Lord just really teaching you how to move, move in that next level because really when you move into the from the role of grandparent, from the role of parent to grandparent, not only are you moving to a grandparent, but I think you said even parenting adults, you know, so that comes with it. And you ask the Lord, you know, how, again, you don't want to overstep your boundaries, but you're excited to be a grandparent. And, you know, how do I make all of this work? Because you want to handle your grandchildren the way you handled your children, but then you have to be respectful to your children,
Right,
to recognize that they are the adult,
right,
you know,
right.
in this situation, and they do, but you want to have the final over the child,
Right.
the grandchild, and the parents. So making that transition, and I have found myself, that might sound like something so minute, you know, but I have found myself saying, Lord, show me how, teach me how, you know, because again, relationship is so important, and you don't want to offend, you know, your children, or you don't want to make them feel like, well, they really don't know what they're doing, or they're inferior as a parent. But at the same time, you want to embrace them, and you want them to really recognize your excitement on being a grandparent. But at the same time, you want to lend your expertise to the parenting part of it. So I found myself saying, Lord, you know, show me how, because I don't, like I said, I don't want to offend the parents, but at the same time, you know, if I can step in and help or lend my expertise, knowing that every situation is different, you know, and you know, each child is different. And even though that's your children, they're not you.
Right.
Mhm.
Can I add something else to that?
Please.
We cannot rule out the word of God in our lives, especially as being believers.
Absolutely.
There's no such thing as you just being too spiritual.
Mhm.
No. I had to learn to take the words out of the Bible
Mhm.
and put them in my heart. I had to learn to take the words out of the Bible and literally apply them to life circumstances. And I've learned some things. I've been talking to God. I talk to God. Like we're talking now. That's how I talk to God. And I tell God, I don't never want to go through this thing no more.
Mhm.
I don't want to go through this, you know. And I tell God how I feel. I tell God my desires. And I literally have a conversation, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
People say they talk to God, but I'm learning how to really talk to God. God is my Father.
Mhm.
I'm your Father. You know how you and I talk? No. Do you know how you and I talk?
I know how you talk. No, I'm teasing. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I talk to God.
Yes, sir.
And when I'm frustrated, I'll tell God, I'm mad.
Yeah.
I'm hot.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And you know what do you know what that is? That's praying. Now that might sound like what's the word you use? Minute. That's the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that brings results.
Absolutely. And you know, again, my hope, especially for this episode, and I think you all have kicked us off pretty good here, is to make this tangible and try to help people zoom out of just being so consumed with what is in the news. And it's not about, again, being aloof and ignoring it and acting like this doesn't have an impact on us. But Daniel went through 4 kings. Just
Yes.
to use one example. Some liked him, some hated him. Some allowed him to be in prison, and some elevated him immediately, and he found favor and were of the biggest blessing, although the preconceived notion, especially from his experience with prior kings, was that, you know, things were going to get harder for Daniel and his people. but he had all kinds of experiences and learned and grew, and I think became a perfect example of how God uses transitions to help us grow. I'll give a good example in the work world. Now, when I entered the work world, there's a certain narrative, about, coworkers and supervisors and all of that. And sometimes, you think the person you like and the person you click with and get along with are the best people to work with or the best people to work for. But one example in my testimony, probably the person that people despise the most was the person who was the best supervisor that I grew the most under, right?
Mhm.
And again, I had this preconceived notion that, a good boss is this, a good supervisor is that. Colleagues
Mhm.
are ones that you see eye to eye and you just click and it's easy to work together. Well, I remember working for somebody that no one in the office liked. They weren't necessarily a good communicator. Uh, they were a person that, no matter what you said and what you thought and brought to the table, it seemed like, they always came with their own vision, their own ideas, and it was always in opposition of what we felt. And then you get that whole coffee break room, conversation, and it's like, well, if they just want to do what they want to do, and we're just, these ants that carry out the work without the opportunity to have our opinion and our voices, valued and mattered, then, I'm just going to buy my time. I'm going to move on and do something else. But I'll tell you, out of everyone I've worked for, and some I really got along with, some I really liked, probably the most impactful person in my life was someone that no one liked, right? Because I found that this particular person was a really good listener. And although they often did things that none of us agreed with, none of us necessarily pitched, or the ideas that we suggested, it wasn't a decision that was made, with a disrespect to what we thought and what we said and what we shared, or even the impact of the work on us. Oftentimes, this particular person just saw things from a perspective that none of us had, and had a
Mhm.
vision that we really didn't free ourselves to have. Extremely creative, extremely inventive, and entrepreneurial. And I started to notice that because I gave this person a shot, and I began to develop my own relationship. And we never really became really close. But this is the person that I credit, and even to this day would say, shaped me tremendously as it relates to my work and my attitude and approach to work. Yet this isn't a person I would hang out with, invite to my house, go to their birthday party. But that transition taught me something. It's not about judging a book by its cover. It's not about who you can laugh with and slap on the back and your backgrounds are the most similar. It's not about who you see yourself in. And it's not even necessarily about the lessons that a person teaches with their mouth. For me, what I learned in that transition was how to put the responsibility on myself to grow and to utilize any example or resource available to me to grow from. And it almost becomes, well, what's your attitude for growth as opposed to how a person presents themselves,
Mhm.
and that was something that for the rest of my life, working with people of all kind of personalities, good communicators, bad communicators, all sorts of traits and characteristics, I learned from that one transition period a lesson that has carried me through the rest of my life. And now that I'm in the position to be on the other side, it informs the way that I approach people. I never forget how I felt. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't approach supervising or leading my team and those that report to me the same way that that person led. I still think there were some real deficiencies. I really think there was some significant flaws in that person, but I also understood it wasn't all about the flaws. So I tried to improve upon how I would do things differently, but I still learned a lot from that person. You know what I mean? So that's an example of how God taught me. And I believe it was completely divine, as you said, Dad. I believe the word applies to my life and not just when I'm in the church. I believe that the scriptures apply to my life, and it's not just when I'm dealing with the scriptures. I believe that favor, I believe that resources are set in your path. I believe that your steps are ordered, and who you're around at the time you're around are a part of those steps that are ordered. So I dare not disrespect God and say, well, you know what? This is a waste. This is a horrible person. This person is meant for evil. Well, all things have to work together for the good. That means a bad supervisor has to work together for the good. You know,
Pastor.
I mean, all of so those are the kind of things that I think if we can focus on in a time like we're in a pandemic, in an economic reception and in a transition of political power in a country that is torn and rent, as it relates to the fabric of the moral compass. I think we can learn lessons in the transition and become closer to who God wants us to be, as opposed to, who we are complacent in being if those transitions don't occur. So with that, I wanted to lead to another question, but I kind of, answered the question for myself.
But you kind of tiptoed
Oh,
even
please.
on the, again, where I was thinking, and as you were talking, as both of you were talking, and again, as it relates to Daniel, even in his leadership and his growth, and then relating that to our spiritual growth, and then looking at that, again, how it goes along with our natural lives. And I was thinking this in Philippians at 4:12, it says, I know both how to be abased and I know how to abound every where and in all things I am instructed both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need, and as you ended your, last comment, you were saying that about lessons, life is full of lessons.
Yes.
And we have to be, again, it's life is twofold. It's a give and a take. It's a put out and a receive, So and talking to God and even praying, it's bi-directional, you have to talk to God, but you have to listen to God, So just learning along the way, and taking in consideration the current government leadership. The one thing we can say when you were talking about your boss, the one thing again that Pastor points out so many times that we can say about the current leadership was shown to us that you can say what you're going to do and you can execute it. That was the biggest lesson I think that we have learned in this current leadership of our nation, that everything, the things that he laid out and said that he was going to do as president, he did.
He did it.
Whether we liked it or not.
Right.
He did that. And so, like you were saying, whether good or bad, we can find flaws, if you will, in everything, or shortcomings or a fault or whatever you want to call it, in everything. But by the same token, those same things people can find in us. So again, it's not how you can point out flaws, but it's how you look at things and how you're able to take it and learn and grow from it. Because I'm sure Daniel started out his life in leadership started out for him being a boy.
You got it.
And so as he grew, I'm sure he could probably tell us along the way that he learned both how to be abased, he learned how to be humble, and then he learned how to be aggressive at the time when he needed to be aggressive, and that's what life lessons are all about,
Absolutely.
It's learning, and then learning along the way as we carry our spiritual lives with it, learning how to trust and depend on God. Because we can quote the scriptures, we can go and find the scripture, we can even find a preacher to really preach it. But personally, have you really learned how to depend on God and trust God and get your leadership from him?
Let me add on to what First Lady has said, your mother has said. When you go to chapter 1 of Daniel, and leadership, the leadership that was there said, listen here, we want children that are learned, we want them good looking, we want them strong, we want them healthy, and
from a good stock.
Well versed,
yes,
and gifted, so they can take care of the things in the palace. Now, let's look at our present leadership that we have. we can look at so many ways, but the things we must learn and take away from life's experiences. You know, because one person can say, I'd rather have someone that is that would tell me what I want to hear. And the Bible said them are the ones that have those that are, yeah. Or give me somebody that's going to do things. They're going to say what they're going to do, and they're going to do it. And then I have the ability to adjust and readjust from the facts.
Yes, sir.
We're not living in I've never, even before I got saved, I want the realness. We say, as parents to children, tell the truth. We say, live the truth. All right? Even if you do something, tell the truth. Even if it's going to hurt, even if the repercussions are going to hurt.
No, I don't want to whoop, but that really hurts. It really hurts.
I wonder who said that. I wonder who said that. It hurts, right?
That hurts. No,
We'll put our researchers on that. Yeah, everyone in the studio, we'll get our researchers together. Somebody look figure out who that person is.
Now, what I'm saying is, and I've said this to some in conversation, and people look at me like, what? I said, what I like about the this administration that we have now is everything they said they was going to do, that's what they did. When you go to other, and when you have the rallies and you have the people campaigning, I asked one person that was campaigning, I said, raised my hand in all respect. I said, are you trying to tell me that everything that you said that you want to see you're going to get done, that you're going to do? Yes. I said, but that's not true. You have to go beyond party lines.
Right. Absolutely.
And if you get somebody enough to agree with you, you may be able to get what you want done.
Right.
I said, don't tell people what you're going to do.
You know what? That's really ironic and serendipitous. I think
excuse me, I didn't get to finish, but go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, no, go ahead. I think this is a part of the organic conversation.
Go ahead.
Right.
You said something that trickles and chases down the notes of where I wanted to head today, because there is two elements. One, there's relationship elements of transition, but also there is the divine design of transition, to reveal truth, right? Every transition is going to show you something. A transition will say, and I mean, I made a point about work. A transition will say, well, you were ready for a promotion, or maybe there was some more growing you need to do, but now you're there now,
Right.
Transition is what tells you. You can say all day, I'm ready to start my own company, I'm ready to pastor a church, I'm ready to preach, I'm ready to do whatever, I'm ready to expand my business, I'm ready for multiple locations, I'm ready to write a book, I'm ready for my kids to be grown, whatever it is, you could say it, but the truth comes out of the transition.
Yes.
And that's when you know whether you were ready or you weren't, right?
Yes.
But the same thing about relationships. Transition has a way of teaching you about relationships. Sometimes relationships have expired in our life, but it takes a transition to show you that, right? Sometimes relationships need to change. Mom made the comment about parenting. You are a child and a parent at some point, most of us, at the same time. You are still somebody's child and you're somebody's parent. And the I can't wait to be grown piece of it is about a certain part of the relationship, which is you being the authority in my life. But then the I can't wait to be grown. Somebody testifying in here. Anybody got a 3-year-old that they're potty training? Amen. Right? You can't wait to be grown, but now it's pay bills, go to work, maintain your house, and raise another person and make all the decisions the right way because there's not a manual for the 3-year-old you got, right? And I might have been making a statement, I couldn't wait to be grown and be on my own, because it was about y'all's authority as parents. But now all of the responsibility that sits on my shoulder that makes me an authority, I don't know that I was thinking all of that all the way through when I made the comment, right?
Right.
So relationships were revealed in the transition as well. And the relationship that was revealed was, man, I appreciate my dad for going to work every day. Man, I appreciate my mom for going to work every day. Man, I appreciate that my mom was so meticulous in keeping our home clean and having such a precise and sharp mind to know how to grocery shop, what was going out, to know what we needed in terms of school supplies, and then be able to do all the shopping and maintain the life and the business that she had on her own. Man, I'm so glad my parents could balance a budget good, because they're able to deal with the wants and the needs and keep this whole operation moving. That's the revelation of the relationship that I could not have until our relationship changed, which was, I'm no
Right.
longer your dependent.
Right.
I am the independent who now has other dependents.
That's
You know,
that transition.
and if it wasn't for the transition, the
Right.
depth and the revelation of the relationship would not have happened, right?
Right. Right.
Here's the other piece of it. We could say all day, I hate living here, I hate living there. You all experience going from Des Moines to Denver, Colorado, to Des Moines to Waterloo. You could say, I hate the traffic here, but I guarantee there was a point in your time where you would deal with Denver traffic, based off of some of the other offsetting things of living in one place or another. You could say,
Right.
oh man, this is a smaller city. We don't necessarily get main stage attractions, or I don't necessarily have direct flights to everywhere I need to go. But then when you
Shopping.
go or shopping, right, and amenities, right. But then when you live in a place like I live, and you got to get in the car, to beat traffic for 2 hours, and then you
Yeah.
got to be at the airport to beat the long lines because it's the busiest airport in the world, and you stuck in the airport for 3 hours. You kind of wish that you had a small airport to go to where you.
Right.
So it is the transition that delivers revelation to us, and we have to understand that it's more than just getting from point A to point B, or persons being in power, or this supervisor or this company. Dad, I remember even when I was a kid, you went through the transition of ownership with Pirelli. I remember
Right.
Pirelli Titan. You went through that transition in ownership. And I know there were things that were said about Titan and things that were said about Pirelli. But once the transition took place, you knew what you appreciated about Pirelli, and then you knew what you appreciated about Titan. The
Right.
transitions deliver revelation. So that's something that you pulled out, Dad. So I want to point this question: what is a revelation that we should be, or what's an, let me rephrase that question, because I'm pulling this organically off of what Dad said. Give an example of a revelation that each of you all have learned as a result of a transition in your life, some kind of transition. What was a revelation that only really came about because of, or directly as a result of a transition?
My,
That you have the greatest son in the world? Is that what you was gonna say?
I had 8 bad mushrooms.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know where that came. I had some bad food that day.
Oh.
Go ahead, Dad.
When the Lord told me to go out and work, and whatsoever is right, I'll pay you. I've been living by faith for over 25 years. And the scripture came alive. When the Lord told me to go work, I worked. Somebody asked numerous times, now where do you work at? I work at Miracle Central. Earlier they said I worked at, before it was Miracle Central, well, I work at Miracle Central. Oh yeah, I know you're a pastor there, but where do you work? So I look at him. Didn't I tell you where I worked at?
Mm-hmm.
Now, they didn't understand the work of ministry.
Right.
People don't understand that. So you work 24 hours. But the Lord promised. Where am I at? Where am I at now? I think Matthew recorded, no man that has given up houses, land, mother, father, family, did not get that back and then be blessed eternally.
Excellent.
Nobody can give up anything for God. Well, blessed be to God here and don't get it back. So the Lord said, go there and work and go, and whatsoever right, I'll pay. That transition from working in a corporate, for a corporate corporation, to being hired by God to do his work, that transition, knowing that when I get my check, is drawn from a heavenly bank, praise Jesus, and God signs for it. That was a great eye-opening. And I tell anybody, yes, I do serve God on a money-back guarantee.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Awesome. Awesome. Mom, what's a revelation that you learn as a result of a transition in your life?
Whew. Quite personal.
Mm-hmm.
um,
That means it's going to be a blessing to somebody.
yeah, really letting the Lord fight my battles.
Mm-hmm.
Being used to always helping out and making things happen, you know, on my own. Growing up, I was really close to my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And she is such a passive person. That's how I viewed her.
Mm-hmm.
And she had a business, child care business, Montessori daycare. And in it, she would hire people and give people chances, and young people in the community that couldn't keep jobs, that had been in trouble, you know, things like that. And she would give them opportunities, rather, you know, in janitorial, whatever, but she'd give them opportunities. And so I would see her hurt a lot. You know, I watched people steal from her, and she wouldn't press charges or turn them in. I've seen people cuss her out and tell her off, lie on her, you know, if things didn't go the way they wanted. And I used to think, you know, there's no way that I'm going to be like that. My mom is a good person, and
Mm-hmm.
all the good she does for people, all the opportunities. So, you know, I took on the warrior maybe for her, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, I'm going to fight for my mom, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to make things happen. I'm going to see to it that, you know, as long as I can control it, as long as I'm around or whatever, no one was going to hurt my mom again.
Yeah.
But I took that, you know, I took that to heart. And as I grew up, you know, I just became more and more like that. And I would, you know, so I would fight my battles, you know, I wouldn't take back, you know, but being safe and really, like I said, taking the word of the Lord off the pages and applying it to my heart, you know, I really had to learn that. I really had to transition into holding my peace and let the Lord fight my battle.
Yeah.
And that wasn't easy, you know, and I find myself still warring with that sometimes, because
Right.
I'm like, listen, you know, I can do something about that. I don't have to wait on the Lord. I can handle this, you know, but just making that transition, that humbleness, learning how to be a base, learning how to take down, you know, learning how to take the low road sometimes. And, you know, that's been a big transition for me.
Absolutely.
You know, it's been that's been huge, but learning it, I haven't conquered it, but I think I'm pretty close.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
No.
I know there are times where I would have taken matters into my own hands, and I have been able to say, Lord, you know, now I bit my tongue until it bled, I went home and probably beat my pillow and the walls and everything else. But you know, just learning that transition, that's been huge. But
Absolutely.
can
No,
I
that's
add
excellent. Let me jump. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dad.
Can I add that one too? I had to apologize to God in transition because I robbed God.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not talking about Malachi, robbing God in tithes and offerings. But I robbed God from being vindictive.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I was a robber.
Mm-hmm.
The Lord says, vengeance is mine.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't belong to me. It needs to be that offenses come against us.
Mm-hmm.
Or war. I was a robber
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted to get back at people.
Yeah.
So I robbed God because the Lord said, listen, Kid Clay, vengeance is mine. Vengeance belongs to me, not you.
Mm-hmm.
So when I try to take matters in my own hand
Yeah.
and get back at folk, I rob God
Yeah.
because that didn't belong to me.
Yeah.
It belonged to God.
Absolutely.
So, you know, I got arrested. I served time. I served time for being a robber to try to get back at folk.
Yeah.
Because vengeance is mine, said Lord. And then the final thing he said, God said, listen, I will repay.
Yeah.
God can do things to folk better and greater than I could do.
Yeah.
God got ways of getting people where minds are so limited. So in transition, you know, yes, I do have a short fuse. You know, some of that's inherited.
You must be
Researchers.
We,
Yeah, yeah, but no, that's and you know I'll throw one in there, and that'll leave us enough time for some closing remarks here. But this is again training and transition, right? Or transition and training. You know, Deacon Bird to figure out how to throw it together in the best way. But you know, I'll tell you, one of my own, you know, transition was one thing I said. I have two wonderful parents, love them to death, spiritual parents and natural parents. I was blessed to have you all in one package. And I've always said, you know, I love my parents so much, I'll do anything for them, right? And a transition came where God was calling me in my life actually to leave you all physically. And hardest thing I've ever done, you know, and it's been, I don't know how many years. I know I've been in the Chicago area for over 11 years now, 10, 11 years. And one of the hardest things for me to do was to make good on that check that I put out there because the Lord clearly showed me. And when I say clearly, I don't mean immediate clear. I mean over the course of my life since that the best way I could help and serve was actually to go. And it was one of those life lessons I never would have thought. I never would have made the association. And I can remember the moments and the months coming that lead in this stirring and this yearning and this calling, and it represented itself in different ways. But the Lord was calling me to leave. But I'll tell you, since I left, I obtained education, I've obtained professional experience, I obtained spiritual experience, I obtained life experiences where I had to really be out there on my own and grow and be in different cities and different states. I've seen the world, I've met and acquired relationships, and every single thing I've been able to bring back and offer and give to you all. And it's
right.
connected to Daniel. Daniel and the three Hebrew boys were called away from their people. Joseph was called away. Moses was called away. Abraham was called away. And we can keep going. And sometimes to make good on your promise, there's a transition and an experience that you wouldn't have embraced or wanted. You couldn't separate me from y'all. You couldn't separate me from our church. But it took the Lord to put that calling in me and to stir me to be able to offer you the best thing. Now, if you were to ask me, and this is the lesson from transition, the way I would go about loving you all and supporting you all would be to be your shadow. You couldn't take a knife and slice between me and you, you know,
Right.
me and you, Dad. You couldn't
Right.
separate that whatsoever.
Right.
It took God to call, and really the lesson there in the revelation, obedience costs you something. You
Yes,
know,
it does.
when you say you will serve God, and when you say you love God and you love your leaders and you love his people, and when you say God, for you, I will live and I will die, that's going to cost you something.
And listen,
It may not be the thing that you're willing to spend either, right? But at the end of the day, my revelation was his will is perfect, because I can't tell you how I've seen time and time again that me being bold enough to take a risk, me being bold enough to be uncomfortable, me being bold enough to be disoriented, me being bold enough to have a need and face the need, me being bold enough to face a challenge has brought back, and I couldn't say it in a braggadocious way, but you all can testify, everything that I've learned and acquired, I brought back to you. Sometimes you need scouts, sometimes you need a Caleb and a Joshua.
Yes, yes.
So it is that thing that was a lesson. You got to be careful what you say, but you also have to be honest to honor your word. When I said I would do anything for you all, when I said I would do anything for the ministry, God put the call in front of me, and it wasn't the way I thought it was going to be, but I believe it's been proven over time, even in what we're doing now. I believe it's been proven that answering that call showed that his ways and his will is more perfect. And it may not be the way you think, but certainly it is his perfect will, and it will reap all the dividends, that God has and can offer. And that's a revelation that I had. It's not always the way that you see it when you make the promise.
and as you were saying, this is what I preached for years, and I still preach it. I preach it and I teach it. When you ask God for anything, first of all, you got to make sure there's a scripture to verify what you're asking God for. That scripture means God co-signs what you're asking. Then, in my transition, I've learned this. You talk to God and say, God, now, whatever you do, help me to accept
Your will.
Mm-hmm.
your will. We
yeah.
ask God, but then when it happens, we fight against what we ask God for.
I didn't hear you right. I ate too late last night. I didn't hear that right.
You have to, when you lay out before God, when you ask God for things, before you close your prayer,
Mm-hmm.
ask God, Lord, help me to accept what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Because a lot of us, God is blessing us, and we fight against the blessing.
Yes.
Because we wanted it our way.
Yes.
So help me to accept, God,
absolutely.
Your will, what you're asking God for.
Yes.
And in 3 seconds, when you was leaving, I remember the COGIC minutes, seconds. I remember coming up Highway 63. And when I knew he was going to leave, Highway 63, tears was flowing like Niagara Falls. Because I felt it in my gut. And I had to ask, Lord, help me to accept
your will.
Your will. And look what God has done for you. So we have to do that.
Yeah.
Take the words off of the Bible, put it in our hearts.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Mom, we have 60 seconds left. We're going to go.
They're all yours.
And leave it to you to close us out. But wonderful conversation today about training and transition, or transition training. Deacon Bert, you got to pick for me, man. I can't do it. But Mom, go ahead and close us with remarks and our virtual benediction.
And again, I thank God. Like I said, mine was quite personal, but just learning, and my prayer is always, Lord, just mold me, make me, and shape me, according to your will and your way, and just help me to accept it. And so, transition, we don't always know what's on the other side, but as long as we're willing to trust God, we'll come out okay. So again, we thank God for you, Clinton, and thank God for safe travels. Good to see you again and into the new year. So we'll just say to everyone, thanks for joining us again for another Chatting with the Clays. Don't forget to like and share.
What is it?
And make a comment so we know that you're there.
You got it. Thank you so much. We'll see you all next time. Love the set. I gotta
I'm done.
What you say, Dad?
Stick a fork in me, I'm done.
All right, we'll see you all next time. I'll hang on to chat with you all.
All right.
All
God
right.
bless.
God bless. My brothers and sisters, I pray that this was a blessing unto you. First Lady Clay, would you like to say anything?
Don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell. Leave a comment. God bless.